Welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. We appreciate you joining us today. In today's episode, we have a special guest on. We will talk to former Minnesota Twins first baseman and current head coach of Alcoa baseball, Steve Dunn, as he'll join us today to talk about his career and life in baseball, his path to the major leagues, and a little bit about what he's doing nowadays at Alcoa as well. So before we get started, I do want to remind everyone as well to follow us on Twitter at PressBoxPod, and also subscribe to the podcast in iTunes if you have not already. So go to the iTunes store or your iTunes app, or your podcast app, and subscribe, and you'll get all our latest episodes as soon as they are ready. You can also do that on Libsyn and Stitcher as well. So we encourage you to do that. And without further ado, let's get into Steve Dunn.
All right, we're joined now by former Minnesota Twins first baseman and currently the head baseball coach at Alcoa High School here in Blount County, Steve Dunn. And Steve, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to reconnect with you guys.
Absolutely. Oh, it's good to reconnect with you. I mean, gosh, how long has it been, Joseph? It's been at least 15 years, maybe?
Yeah, 12 in that 12 to 15 range, so it'll be good. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, for those of you out there who don't know, and obviously none of you do, Steve used to give Joseph, my co-host, batting lessons in our batting cage when Joseph was coming up through high school playing baseball. And
yes.
and I can vouch for the fact that Steve is an excellent coach.
Well, thank you.
I used to cover Alcoa High School when I had the Press Box Saturday show, and Steve's a top-notch guy. And Steve, we really appreciate you joining us today.
No, this is great. I appreciate it.
Let's
now, Steve. Go ahead, Joseph.
I was going to say, let's start right there. Currently, with your job coaching at Alcoa High School, have you guys started school yet this semester?
Yes. Yeah. We let's see. We have been back a little over a week since the winter break.
Okay, so just kind of take me right now through the timeline of what you guys are doing now as a program and kind of building up into that first game, I guess in February or early March, right?
Yeah, early March, mid-March.
Yeah.
I think our first game is March 12th.
Okay.
But right now, we're in an open facility stage. The TSSAA, which is the Tennessee Secondary Sports Association, they set rules for when you can practice and what you can do. And this is called an open facility stage where players can go out and practice baseball, but we can't directly coach them. We can coach 3 players per day on direct baseball stuff. We can also work with pitchers, but they can be doing conditioning. They can be doing stuff on the field. We just can't have direct access, organizing practices and leading those practices, that sort of thing. So that's what we do. But like all sports, that's, trickled down to high school, it's pretty much a 365-day thing now. And there's really not much of an off season. There are a few dead periods in high school sports where you're not allowed to do anything. But usually there's something you can do. And if you want to compete, you better be doing it.
Yep.
Now, Steve, before we get started, I want you to, you probably already know this, I don't know if you do or not, but there was also a Steve Dunn who played in the major leagues in 1884 for the St. Paul Whitecaps. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's probably no relation there. Am I right in that?
As far as I know, but that's as far as I know.
The St. Paul Whitecaps. I didn't even know there was a team till I started looking into that. But,
that's amazing. I'm going to look that up when I get finished.
Isn't that amazing? I mean,
yeah,
I found 2 Steve Dunns. You and the guy that played for the St. Paul Whitecaps. So
yeah, that is unreal. I am going to look that up, and if I happen to be related, I'm going to let you know.
Well, let's go back a little bit to when you were starting out. Now, you went to I guess James W. Robinson High School. Is that right?
That's correct, in Fairfax, Virginia. It's a suburb of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and I have a brother who lives in Falls Church, so we're pretty familiar with the area, and it's a really nice area. So talk to me a little bit about when you were growing up. I mean, like what was life like? Did your whole family play sports? Did you play more than baseball? I mean, how did you kind of get into the baseball thing?
Well, I was when I got into the baseball thing, we lived in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas,
Okay.
on a military base there. My father was military, and I was just a little kid. I think I was 4 years old, and there was a baseball field across the street from where we lived, and I kept crossing the street, and my mom kept finding me over there, and I kept going over there, and finally one of the coaches of a t-ball team said I could be their bat boy.
Okay.
I got a uniform and everything, and I thought that was the neatest thing. And I just, from that point, I guess I just fell in love with the game. I always played it. I always was, living it. I was fortunate enough to where we lived in Virginia, we had 5 acres of land, and I was able to go out there, and we had a barn, we had horses, and I would play countless hours throwing a ball off that wall and fielding it, throwing it, and would hit, and the pastures and all these things, and played wiffle ball with my buddies. And, it was just such a big part of my life. From the moment I can remember, I always wanted to play baseball, and I always wanted to play Major League Baseball. And I grew up a Yankee fan, and my father took me to my first game when I was, I believe I was probably 6. And it was just, it was something that I just always loved doing. I don't know really why. My mom is an elite horseback rider. My father was a runner, but nothing like this. And it was just a passion of mine. I did play basketball. I did play football.
Okay.
But I finally got to a point in high school where I knew what I wanted to do, and I thought I knew what I needed to do to get there. So I kind of dropped everything and focused solely on baseball.
Yeah. So yeah, at your high school there in Virginia, what was the kind of the baseball scene like in that county? Was it known for a more competitive baseball high schools, or was it kind of under the radar? Or talk about just kind of the baseball scene.
It was really good. It's a little different because obviously this kind of the further south you go,
sure,
the better it seems most sports get. I mean, especially football, baseball, that kind of thing.
Right.
But my school was, I went to school. My high school was 3,500 kids.
Yeah.
And our district was 8 teams, but our region was 24. So, there was huge numbers of kids playing. And now I guess lacrosse is pretty big up there, and it's drawn some of those kids away from baseball.
Yeah.
But I remember being highly competitive. It was, for me, I was so engrossed in baseball that I thought just everyone was. So I really don't know how, how good it was or whatever. I just knew that I loved to play, and my coach loved it, and he taught me how to love it even more. And I know that the schools were huge. I know a lot of kids went out for it. I know we had to make a lot of cuts, and it was highly competitive in that sense. So as far as I can remember, it was fairly competitive.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you. I want to touch on something that you just mentioned because I thought it was really, really interesting. You talked about how when you were growing up, you used to, throw the ball against the wall for hours and hit in the field, and we had George Quarles on last week, and you and George are about the same age. I mean, I think you're late 40s. George is around 50, and I'm about 10 years older. But I did the same thing. George did the same. I mean, I used to throw a ball against a stoop, and try to get it to go certain ways. I mean, just hours and hours and hours on end of doing it. Today you don't see that. I mean, the kids today, they're either playing video games or they're specializing in sports. I mean, do you think we've lost something there? I mean, do you think that's what made great athletes and great ball players was that playing for the love of it and doing it over and over again?
Yeah, I think what's happened is, and I think today's athlete is bigger and stronger,
right?
But I don't think they're as skilled.
Okay.
And I get very frustrated with my players because half of them can't even throw a rock in the air and hit it with a broomstick.
Yeah,
right.
They can't hit a fungo, and they don't know how to throw the ball up and just hit it. And It's very frustrating to someone that was part of my childhood. And it's one of the, and you probably experienced this too, but growing up, it wasn't just me out there. We had buddies. Yeah. We were just playing games. We would play football. We would play basketball. We would just be out, and we would be running haywire. and which is a tremendous blessing of my childhood that I truly cherish. But we just played, we imagined. I have a tremendous imagination. I used to imagine playing baseball, hitting these game-winning home runs, imagined stadiums, imagined all these things. And it was just literally just so much a part of my life that I just kind of breathed it, and I just loved it. And, a lot of kids today, I think, are a lot more talented, probably bigger and stronger, these athletes today. But some of the fundamental stuff is so lacking. And some of these kids can make up for it with athletic ability and strength, but just the pure baseball skill sets. Well, I know the reason why, but it frustrates me that we can't get back to that, and that we don't see it. I've got a neighbor a couple doors down. He's got 3 boys, and I see them out there playing ball all the time, and it just literally makes me smile that they're out there playing instead of sitting in front of a computer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for you, at what point, growing up, obviously you just talked about playing and up into high school. What point did you realize that not only did you love to play and you might make this a career, that you realize, hey, I'm really good at this, and I legitimately have a chance to go far in this?
Well, I always, loved it. And when I remember I had a specific conversation, like a lot of kids do, like I get a lot with my kids today, but I asked him, I of course, when you're in high school, I wanted to play college baseball.
Right.
And, I asked him about that. And at that time, I was somewhat tall. I wasn't very strong, but I was good. I mean, I was a good, solid player. And he said, I don't know yet. And, I don't think you can play at a North Carolina or, a big Division I program, that kind of thing at this point. And that was fair. That was fair. I came back and had a really, really good junior year, but I was still not really, really strong or that sort of thing. And then what happened was I was an all-district, all-region, all-metropolitan player as a junior, but we went into the summer and we used to play American Legion baseball, and I'm sure, Ralph, you probably did.
Yep.
They don't have that anymore around here, but I played American Legion baseball that summer, and it was a transformation. I ended up becoming the Virginia State American Legion Player of the Year. I grew. I hit the weights hard. I started gaining this power that I never knew that I had. And going into my senior year, it just progressed very rapidly, where I was getting calls every day and people started taking notice. And then Baseball America, which is a newspaper for, baseball freaks like myself. I had received a scholarship to the University of North Carolina after my junior year, and I had signed that, and that's what my plan was. But then Baseball America came out, and I was listed as a 16th pick in the draft.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. So this kind of just steamrolled things, and I kind of was like, oh my gosh. But I guess, I was probably like a lot of kids. I'm like, I really can't be that good, or am I really as good as they're saying I am? I didn't really trust in that, but I started to understand that that my level and what I was capable of was at least at that point vastly greater than those who I was playing with.
I want to touch on one thing you said there too about hitting the weights, because me as a strength and conditioning coach now. Back then, what was your approach to that? Did you have any knowledge going in, or did you go to a coach or maybe a family member and kind of get into it? So how was your approach to hitting the weights back then?
I knew nothing.
Nothing?
I knew nothing.
Okay.
You obviously are, the education level of strength and conditioning training now is so far beyond what I ever understood in high school.
Sure.
Yeah.
Our weight conditioning program at our school with our strength and conditioning coach, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
But even when I was playing with the Twins, and this is as late as the mid-'90s, there was no strength and conditioning program.
Wow.
When I went to Cleveland, they were the first ones that started enacting these programs, these strength and conditioning programs. Now, of course, everyone now is doing it. But when I was in high school, I would put dumbbells on a bar and start bench pressing it. And,
Wow.
I would, do squats, things that I knew.
Right.
No one ever taught me what to do. I just kind of started throwing stuff around and figuring it out, but had no real plan. I mean, I wish I knew what I did now. Of course, all of us do.
Right.
But back then, I just picked up stuff and try to get stronger. And I hit a growth spurt. I was 6'3". I went from about 165 as a junior to probably about 205 as a senior.
Wow.
I just kept getting bigger and stronger. But even through playing pro ball, it was really me training myself. We really didn't. It wasn't a thing that our organization really put a lot of emphasis on.
It's interesting. You mentioned how earlier when you said, I didn't really think I was that good or didn't know how good I was. And, but it's funny because, I was in the same category. My dad, I was lucky if he came to a game. He was always working, and the thing is, today it's totally different. Today, most dads are telling their kids they're better than they are,
Right.
But back when we were growing up, it was like, hey, gosh, am I really going to be able to do this? I mean, can I actually do this? I mean, it's just amazing how times have changed. And I think that goes along with the video game world, and everybody wants a scholarship and all that stuff. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think part of what happens too, Ralph, is that you get into these summer programs and you're paying a lot of money to play.
Right.
And, or you're getting private lessons and you're spending a lot of money. And a lot of these parents, these baseball parents, they want return on that investment.
Right.
And sometimes, it's very easy to think that you're better than you are. And
Right.
One of the things I really appreciate about my high school coach that I was very close to is he was honest with me. And, he gave me his honest opinion. And then when it came down to, was I going to go to college and play? Was I going to sign professionally? We had a lot of talks about that. And he said, look, you are good enough to do this. And, you can, and I trusted him on it. And, I just went out there and gave it a shot.
So let's go. So you were drafted, I think, was it the fourth round by the Twins? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So all of a sudden you go from, the American Legion Player of the Year, all the accolades you probably received in that last year. Now you're drafted in the fourth round by the Major League club. So your dreams have pretty much been fulfilled. And now you got to go into the minor leagues. So talk about the change of lifestyle. I mean, we've seen movies on TV that chronicle that particular lifestyle, but it had to be a total shock to your system to go from high school where you were the king to riding the bus somewhere in the minor leagues. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny because, of course, I was 18 years old and I had all the intention of the world to go into college. Even I told the draft, I said, look, I'm going to college and that this is what I'm going to do. And the Twins took a shot with me. A funny story, I got a call from I got a call the night before the draft by the Detroit Tigers. And they said, we would like to make you our first pick. We have the 26th pick in the draft.
Wow.
But we need to know that you will sign. And I said, I can't do it. I'm going to college. Right. They ended up taking Rico Bronya. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember the name.
I do remember that name.
But yeah, he played for the Braves, and they probably got a better pick. But I said no. Then the Twins drafted me, and I said no. I'm going to college, And then I went down to an all-star game and in Virginia, and I'm like, I've always wanted to do this. And I came back and I decided to do it, and I got in my little Toyota Tercel, and I headed to Elizabethton, Tennessee.
Right.
And I got down to the ballpark, the first day. And of course, there's Latino players and there's black players and there's older players, guys right out of college. Right. And the game got rained out. And I was sitting in this hotel room. I think I went to like a Winn-Dixie or something and got some food. And I'm sitting in that hotel room and I'm like, what have I just done to myself? And I didn't know how to feed myself. I didn't know a whole lot about nutrition.
Right.
I was just surviving, and I was making $700 a month. I thought I was making a ton of money. I was living in this kitchen and on this cot. And, that was my first experience with, professional baseball. And, of course, as any professional baseball player, they have story after story. But my first road trip, there was a black guy and a Latino guy, and they got in the fight on the way home on the bus. And then when they got back to the hotel, the Latino guy broke the black guy's arm with a bat.
Oh,
Wow.
And I'm just going, what is going on?
Right.
And it was bizarre and it was weird, but it was a lot of fun. And, once I learned the lifestyle a little bit and learned what I was doing, I could actually take care of myself a little bit. But the first time I signed, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of a misconception out there if you don't follow the sport as closely as, you see things like the NFL draft or the NBA draft, and these guys, if they're a first round pick, or even if they get drafted at all, because there's so few rounds, they're either going to or have a legitimate shot of making, the roster that year. But obviously in baseball, you could be a first round pick and then you still have to go through that minor league grind. So I guess, if you had to, if a kid today was asking you advice, and maybe he's not a slam dunk first round pick who's going to get a big signing bonus, but he's in that, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round range and was asking you for advice, what would you tell them, in terms of going into pro ball out of high school these days?
Well, for me, looking back on it, it was the right decision for me because I wasn't ready to go to college and play baseball, in the sense that it had been very difficult for me to do the academic side and excel at the baseball side, at least when I look back on it. And I'm glad I went the route that I did. I appreciated my education when I got finished and went back a lot more than I probably would have if I went right out of high school.
right.
But the thing of today, Joseph, the money, the money's so big. I mean, the first round pick in my draft in 1988 was Andy Bennis.
Yes.
And Andy Bennis signed for $160,000. And he was the number one pick in the draft. And the number one pick for the Twins was a guy named Johnny Ard, and he signed for $92,000.
Right.
Wow.
And now today, I mean, if you're the first pick in the draft, you're a millionaire.
Yeah, you're getting
Right.
7, 8.
You're a millionaire a few times over.
Yeah.
And, you could get down into the 10th, 15th round and you're still making $500,000 just to sign.
Sure.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I think of a kid, usually what they'll do is they'll write education into the contract. That's one of the things that I had done in mind. So I had my education paid for.
Right.
I guess a lot just depends on who the kid is, what type of mentality that he has, certainly what his projection is. It would be a case by case scenario. Because you gotta grow up very quick.
Sure.
You got to grow up when you go to college, obviously, but when you're on your own at 18, and you're trying to make a life out of this, you got to grow up, and there's some mental struggles that you're going to deal with that you might not have to if you take the college route.
Yeah, and physical struggles as well, because obviously you've stepped up in levels. I mean that's obvious. But
right.
But let's talk. So now you're with the Twins. You're in their minor league organization, and talk a little bit about how your career progressed. I mean, obviously anybody can go to the internet and find your statistics. That's not really what I'm interested in. But talk a little bit about what you went through. I know you probably progressed through A and AA and AAA and all that. But what was it like? And then when you got your first opportunity to make it to the show, as they say.
Well, what I really and when you get into professional baseball, you really have to learn how to fail.
Right.
And that's mental. I mean, you just have to learn how to deal with all of that failure, because of course these guys that are coming in aren't used to failing at the level that you will in professional baseball. And, it took me years really to develop strength, to get stronger, to get bigger, to have a clue as to know what I was doing. So I spent from 1988 to 1991, between rookie ball and low A ball.
Mm-hmm.
In 1992, I had my best year I had playing, and that kind of propelled me. And so then I went to AA and I did pretty well there. And then I went to AAA. I played 3 years at the AAA level and was a pretty good AAA player. Um, I got my first call up in 1994 when the Twins' first baseman got injured. And I got called up for about a 2-week period of time and filled in for him while he was gone. And then when he came back, I came back down. And then would get another call up at the end of the 1995 season. But for me, it was a long progression. It's usually, Ralph, it's usually a different scenario for a position player, a hitter, than it is for a pitcher per se. Pitchers have the tendency they can climb pretty quickly.
Right.
If you look at a major league roster, 12 to 13 of those spots are pitcher spots.
Right.
And, as a position player, it's a little more, I don't want to say difficult because I don't want to undermine anyone that gets to that level by any means, but
right.
It's just a different path and there's a lot of development. I mean, it is hard to hit, period, let alone hit guys that know what they're doing. And it takes a lot of adjustments, a lot of, again, the mental side of it. And I think truly in the end, I know at least for me, wishing I knew what I knew now, but
right.
I think it was the mental side that got me more than anything.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you a little bit about it's kind of the difference or the gap from AAA to the big leagues, because you'll hear about some guys that they're called 4A players where they can dominate in AAA, but they can't quite stick in the big league. So, would you say it's mostly all mental, or is it combined with that talent gap too?
Well, like I said, I think I was a really good AAA player. Right. I hit 290 once, I hit 309, and I hit 316 in 3 seasons in AAA. And I really consider myself that I was really good at that level. Mm-hmm. The thing that I saw when I got to the big league level, of course, you're making another jump, but mm-hmm. is how quickly people could adjust. Mm-hmm. And, pitchers could adjust to you very quickly and you had to try to adjust back to them. It's not necessarily that, they threw any harder at that level, though some did. It was just the number of pitches that they could throw, the command that they had, their adjustments were so much quicker. So in a lot of sense, you get to that level, and at least for me, I felt like I didn't just trust myself to play the game that I always played. Mm-hmm. The game sped up for me. I had a hard time slowing it down. I was, the mental side, you want to do good. You don't want to fail. You press, you do all these things as you understand as athletes. And it's really conquering because, I think when you get to AAA, maybe even AA, if you get to AA baseball, professional baseball, you are a pretty good baseball player.
Right.
And, it's those guys that make it to that level, a good bit of them probably could play at the major league level if they could conquer the mental side of the game. But these guys that can do it, obviously they have great talent, but these great players are just so strong mentally that it just has a tendency to separate guys very quickly.
Let's take a quick break to tell you about our sponsor, Bonus Room Art. They've been sponsoring us on the podcast since day one. Head to bonusroomart.com today to look at some great art prints of sports and movies. You can pick up prints at their store as well as inquire about custom artwork for you, a friend, or your business. Also, don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Bonus Room Art to see some great progress that they're making in all the new art they're producing. So again, that's Bonus Room Art. And now, back to Steve Dunn. Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that, for example, I am, I'm a pitcher back then for a team, and I'm playing the Twins. I see the lineup card, and I see Steve Dunn hitting, 6th, 7th. Before the game, I'm meeting with my catcher, my pitching coach. What's the scouting report on Steve Dunn back then? What do you do well?
They're not going to know much. They're not going to know much.
I know. I'm saying,
no,
asking you.
Yeah. They might get some sort of, if they have an affiliate in the minor leagues in AAA or something, they might have some sort of scatter plot, that kind of thing. But usually, at least in my understanding, they feel you out. Like, so I started out in Milwaukee and, I hit the ball really hard the first few days and blah, blah, blah. And I think once you start to get a few at bats and there's some data starting to collect on you by my fourth game, I always had a difficult time hitting high fastballs. And honest to God, by the fourth game, I was seeing high fastballs.
Yeah.
And I remember playing the Orioles. We're facing Ben McDonald. I don't know if you remember that name.
Yeah, LSU.
6'7" LSU kid throwing 95 miles an hour. And I swear to you, I never saw one ball below my belly button. And he would just blow me away with it. And so you either got to learn to stay off of that or you got to somehow make an adjustment. But they gather that data on you very quickly. And I'm sure today, in today's world, it's much different because of the internet and the accessibility of computers and how much data they can gather. But in the mid 90s, it took a little time for them to get that information in the scouting report on you.
Talk about, you mentioned you had a little trouble dealing with the mental side of it and the pressure, because you wanted to do well, you wanted to be successful. Is it different for somebody like you said you had gotten called up for a couple weeks when the regular first baseman had gotten injured, so you knew you were on a limited assignment pretty much. Is it different for somebody like you who says, hey, I've got to be able to maximize this 2-week look that I've got, as opposed to say somebody who's a number one pick who makes it the starting first baseman right out of spring training, and he's going to get more opportunities to fail? Is there a difference there in how the pressure mounts, or is it the same?
Yeah, it's definitely different. At least in my case, I had a buddy of mine named Brian Robbie, who I played many years with in the minor leagues and some in the big leagues. And he he hit the nail on the head. He told me, he said, look, it's all about getting comfortable. Mm-hmm. You're a good AAA player because you got comfortable playing at that level and you were comfortable with it. And until you get comfortable at the highest level of the game, you're going to struggle. And, yeah, I 100% agree with you that, I tried to make so much out of the opportunities that I had that probably, you press a little bit and that sort of thing. It is vastly different between, hey, you're going to go out there every day and you're going to get to fail and you're going to develop. That's a whole different ball game than trying to, hold the spot that's really not yours. And
right.
It is completely different. And to be fair, I got those kind of opportunities in the minor leagues, and a lot of guys didn't. So,
right.
I was a high round draft pick, and they had invested in me, and so I was allowed. I was playing every day. I was allowed to go out there and fail. I was allowed to go out there and develop. It's just that when my time came to get to the major league level, that role kind of switched a little bit, and I never got comfortable in that slot. So, yeah. And that's just the way the game is. I mean, it's a tough game at any level.
Yeah.
In any sport.
Any regrets?
No, I don't have any regrets. This isn't a regret, but obviously when you look back on things and you're like, man, if I would have known that,
right.
I started teaching hitting a little bit when I was done, and I became a better hitter after I started teaching it. Mm-hmm. But like I tell my kids, my players, I said, look, I can honestly look in the mirror and I can honestly say that I did everything I knew how to do mm-hmm. with the information that I had at the time. Mm-hmm. Now, not everything that I did was the right way to do it, mm-hmm. but it's what I knew to do.
Right.
And so, I look back on it, and what a wonderful experience, what a wonderful bunch of people that I met. Just the chance to play the game beyond high school was amazing. I have no regrets whatsoever. I loved every minute of it. My wife loved every minute of it when we were together. It was a fantastic opportunity. And, at the end of the day, I can say I played in the big leagues. Now, I tell my kids, I say, look, I might have stunk at the highest level. At least I made it to the highest level.
That's right.
Absolutely. That's right. So what year was your last year playing then?
96.
Okay.
I signed Cleveland, and after that season was over, I kind of knew that my window, well, I thought my window was kind of closing. The book was out, I was a pretty good AAA player. Um, and I kind of felt like, I don't know if I want to keep going. Maybe I need to go back to school and start a different path in my life. And so that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, that was kind of leading me into my next question is, once you made that decision, did you have a certain path you were thinking about pursuing, or did you just know that you wanted to go back to school and see where it
I
went from
had
there?
no idea.
No,
I was
gotcha.
scared after death, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I knew I had to go to school.
right.
I had school paid for. So I went back, scared to death, didn't know what I was doing. I'm going to fail, all these things. My wife kept, got to stay in there, stick it through.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into, ultimately wanted to be a teacher. And I thought that'd be kind of cool. And I enjoyed, the stuff that I was learning. And I figured, I could still coach the game a little bit. I've always been doing that. Even when I was going back to school, I was doing coaching stuff, and, everything just really worked out really well.
Did you want to be, when did you know you wanted to be a coach? Or was that something that you always kind of had in the back of your mind?
Well, I knew I loved the game so much. And
so you wanted to be a part of it.
yeah, I mean, I didn't know when I got out, of course, I coached some summer teams, and I was still doing lessons and that kind of thing. And I coached some down at Webb High School for a guy down there, and helped out there. And I kind of liked it, and then when I went back to school and got my teaching degree, and graduated college, this job came open at Alcoa, and their baseball coaches happened to have stepped down that year. And I was approached about it, and I figured, heck, I can coach baseball. I can teach. Maybe me coaching is going to help me get a job here for good. And that was 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you mentioned Alcoa, where you are now. During my time growing up in the area, and I guess even to an extent now, people think football when they first think of Alcoa. But just talk about kind of how you brought the baseball program along, because they've definitely done some big things. I mean, even since I was in high school in the area, you guys have a new field, probably some new facilities. Just talk about the growth of that program.
Well, yeah, there, obviously when you talk about Alcoa or Maryville, you're talking about an elite football program, in this area, and that's what people know it for. And I always tell people, we are good for what we are. We try to develop the kids that we have, to the best that we possibly can. Obviously, we do deal with some field issues and facility issues that's a little bit of a thorn in my side. But I so enjoy it, and I've invested so much in it, and put so much into it, and it's we're good for what we are. We're very competitive. We've done some good things. We're getting to a point, even starting this year, we're going to get really pretty good. We got some really good players this year. And so it's just, one of those things where, we're not a state powerhouse or anything like that as of yet. But, to me, I love building relationships with these guys. I love coaching these guys. I love trying to get what all coaches do, get out of their players what they can get out of them, and try to help them along the way. And it's just, I'm fortunate that I can do that in a baseball context and a teacher context, and try to impact, kids and build relationships with them that'll last for a little while. And hopefully at the end of the day, they'll have had some fun playing baseball as well.
I know from watching you coach and from interviewing you when we had press box and watching your kids, I mean, you do it the right way. Just what you said, trying to become part of their lives, trying to teach them life lessons, trying to help them develop. But there's a lot of coaches who aren't like that. So, can you be successful doing it any other way? And I know that's going to sound like a foreign question to you because you do it the right way. But I mean, that's really the only way you can really make a difference in their lives and ultimately be successful, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I really do. I mean, you look at, you look at how things trickle down and, even at the high school level, it has gotten to a point where at least in some people's minds that it's all about winning.
Mm-hmm.
You are not a successful coach or not a successful this if you are not winning. You certainly see that at the college levels and these type of things. And the thing about high school is, you're for all intents and purposes, you're given a certain group of kids, and you look at that group and you try to get out of them what you can get out of them, and try to maximize their abilities. But at the end of the day, I still talk to kids that I had on my first baseball team, and go to their weddings and these type of things. And to me, that just means a lot to me that they would even, consider me and to do that, and to see them get married and to call me up and come back and see me and that sort of thing. And, so at the end of the day, again, when I look myself in the mirror, I want to make sure that I'm pretty balanced, and, that I've spent the appropriate amount of time with my family, developing my relationships here, developing relationships and growing individually for myself. Obviously as a teacher, I have relationships with kids outside the baseball program and also with the baseball program. So I really want to make sure that I'm well balanced in my life. I'm extremely fortunate that baseball is in my life, and that I get to keep having this as a part of what I do, because, there's sometimes you get tired and frustrated, but I really think at the end of the day, if I didn't have it, there would be a hole that's missing in my life. It's been a part of me, since I walked across that street, and I might not be the best at it or know everything about it, but I dare say there's not many people that love it more than I do.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Absolutely. So, I know you just talked a little bit about some coaching philosophy type stuff, but what is your role as a coach there at Alcoa in terms of, I guess for lack of a better word, promoting or helping your some of the kids that want to play in college, get looks, scholarships, that type of thing?
Well, the way it works now, the recruiting thing is very interesting. If you are a Division I level player, you are pretty much going to be known by the end of your junior year.
Sure.
That if you are that level talent, especially where we are, where you're playing games, you're getting exposure, coaches see you play, you're going to get exposure, and you're going to go somewhere and play. Unfortunately, I think a lot of kids that want to play college baseball don't really understand what they're saying. I think that they have a version of themselves that is, they think that they are better than they are. Their parents probably think that they're better than they are. I try to tell my kids. Now we have some kids right now on this team that could play college baseball, but in the past, a kid's like, well, I hit 400 and on this team. I'm like, yeah, you did, and that's great, but would you have hit 300 at the 3A level? Would you have hit 400 if you're playing down in Georgia? So many kids out there that they have a hard time maybe understanding exactly how many players are better than them.
Sure.
And so, a lot of what's happening now is you go to these showcases, and these colleges put these showcases on, and it's mainly about money and just get these kids to spend the money to go and play and all these things. And, what I try to do, if there's a kid that I think that can play, one, I ask them to write down kind of what they're thinking. If I think that they can play at the next level, I'll be honest with them and tell them that, there are certain levels that I think that they should pursue. Of course, everyone wants to play at the Division I level, and that's just not feasible for most kids. And so if they can do that, I'll make phone calls, and I'll try to directly contact a coach. And of course, the coaches want to see them play. And so they're, go to your showcase, that kind of thing. So we do a little bit of that, but to be honest with you, Joseph, as you probably know, if you're good, they're going to find you.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to these showcases and no one's really saying anything, there's a good reason why. there's certain things that coaches look for in the different tools that players have, and a lot of these kids, I'm like, you have none of them. So, I don't quite know what to tell you, but those of you that do want to play and that have some ability to play, then yeah, I'll do anything that I can to help them.
Sure.
But also they have to understand what it is they're saying when they want to commit to playing at a higher level.
Right.
Steve, let me get before we move on to our next segment. I want to ask you one question that I've always wondered. Joseph and I talk about this a lot, and I want to get your opinion, having played the game at a high level and now coaching it. You see so many players today, mostly in the major league level, but in college as well. I mean, pitchers with arm trouble, players with oblique injuries. I mean, guys missing games from muscle. I mean, it just seems like the injuries are so much greater. When I was growing up, and probably when you were too, I mean, you had pitchers in the major leagues. They pitched complete game after complete game. Some of them pitched both ends of a doubleheader. I mean, and some of the position players, I mean, these guys smoked and drank and, didn't watch their weight, but they played every day and they hit 300, 400. So what's your take on that? I mean, why are we seeing so many guys with arm troubles and so many of these injuries? I mean, is maybe the strength and conditioning counterproductive, or what's your take on it?
I don't know if it's something that I know at the lower levels, and again, I don't want to ridicule anything because these guys are given their time, but a lot of it at the lower levels, the guys just don't know how to teach what they're teaching. Mm-hmm. And these pitchers are getting into terrible habits or throwing breaking balls too early, all these things. At the big league level, it's all become about power.
Right.
I mean, heck, I don't know what the number was of guys that could hit 100 miles an hour now. And, when I was playing, if you saw a guy throwing 95, you saw that was fast. And
right.
The average guy was probably somewhere between 90, 92, maybe. But everything's built for power right now. And it's funny you say that. I watch the MLB Network a lot, and Pedro Martinez was breaking some of these power pitchers down. And he was talking about how these power pitchers are getting a lot more flexion out of their elbow and delivering more power because that elbow is below the shoulder. Mm-hmm. And he says how difficult that is on the ligaments in that throwing arm, and how they're pulling off more and how they're trying to generate more rotationally and these type of things. And I found that curious. I think a lot of it is probably, I mean, some of these guys, as you well know, are massively big.
Yes.
Right.
So strong. I mean, even Altuve, you look at that guy and just like, yeah, the guy's 5'7" or whatever he is, but so strong. And I just think when you're that strong and you have that much muscle buildup, I would think it's got to be hard on ligaments and tendons, let alone the muscle itself. So it has gotten to be a science in terms of strength and conditioning. But I got to think you can out-strengthen what your body's load is really able to maximize and generate. When you're creating these kind of torques and these type of things that these athletes are doing, it really is amazing. But there's going to be injuries that come with it, and I think Major League Baseball is that way. NFL football. I mean, NBA basketball, these guys are just so big and so strong and so elite. I just think they're putting so much on those tendons and ligaments that, you're bound to get injuries because of it. At least that's my take. Joseph, you might know a lot more about that than I do.
No, I mean, I think your point is definitely valid about just kind of, the wear and tear in the body that can take so much. I think that they have so much baseball activity. I mean, if you look at, obviously I don't know what the daily routine was back in the old days, but you get to the park around noon, 1 o'clock. You have early hitting, then you have BP, then you maybe have early work in the minor leagues, and you come back in, you hit in the cage more, and you go play a 9-inning game, and like we talked about, maybe that morning you had weights or whatever. So I think it's just the cumulative stress of all the activity that's being asked of them. Combined with, like you said, some of the guys kind of wound tight and their muscle in their body. I think that kind of takes a toll over time on some players.
And then on the flip side of that, look at the hitting side of it. I mean, the hitting is a lost art. There's no more hitting. I mean, nowadays you can strike out 200 times, but if you hit 60 home runs or 55 home runs, you're the greatest baseball player that's ever lived. And I think I don't like that. I mean, I long for the days when a guy hit and run or bunted a guy over or went the opposite way to move a runner or, got a single down the line. I mean, you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. My father-in-law is a big baseball fan, and he goes crazy with these strikeout numbers. I mean, it's now, to be honest, a lot of what those guys are facing now is ridiculously scary.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about setup guys and closers.
Right.
You're not talking about the same type of pitching scenarios.
You're right.
And even the depth of pitches now that guys are throwing. So it's become a lot more specialized, and I think in a lot of ways harder to hit, if you will. But boy, when they do hit, goodness gracious sakes. I mean, I've seen Juan Carlos Stanton take some swings and miss, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That guy is just a monster. So, I agree with you. I don't know if we're going to see any more Tony Gwynn's or Rod Carews or people like that, because it's just not the way the game is right now. But that's really a very interesting. It's an old school approach. The older guys like myself and my father-in-law and you
and me.
Why are they striking out so much? This is ridiculous. He's got 50 home runs and he's driving in 100.
Well, look at Judge, the guy for the Yankees. I mean, the guy hit 52 home runs, but he struck out. I mean, gosh, I don't remember how many. He struck out more than any Yankees ever struck out. I mean, it's just amazing.
It was 190 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, but when he got into one and hit a 490-foot home run, I mean, everybody was in awe. So
yeah, it is. I mean, if he had 600 at bats, I mean, what goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, he's striking out one every 4 times.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
All right, Joseph, time for our rapid fire.
Okay, so we want to finish up here like we do with all our guests with a segment like we call rapid fire. So we just some quick questions. First answer that pops into your head, kind of go in all different directions just to kind of let our listeners get to know you a little better and have some fun, all right?
Okay.
All right, so
all right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe. No, you can go first.
All right, so first one here. As a player, did you always prefer a day game or a night game?
Night game.
Okay.
All right. Who was when you were growing up as a kid? Whose poster did you have on your wall? What player or what celebrity did you have on your wall that you admired?
That's easy. Don Mattingly.
Donnie Baseball. There you go.
Donnie Baseball. All right.
What's a current TV show that you would most like to make a cameo in?
Oh boy. I'm going to go with, if Friends was still on, I would go with Friends.
Okay, that's a good one.
All right, that's a good one. That's an excellent one. What? No, that's a good one. What one person, if you could, throughout history, would you like to have lunch with?
I'm going to go with probably. Do I pick just one?
You can pick more than one if you want.
I would probably go with my hero, Crazy Horse.
Crazy Horse.
Yep.
All right. Interesting.
Okay. So as a manager, are you a dugout guy or coach third base guy?
I coach third base.
Okay. Any particular reason why?
I like to control the game.
Okay.
All right.
I like to be in control of it and know exactly what I want to do without having to relay anything.
What was your favorite stop in minor league baseball? And when you made it to the major leagues for the time that you did, what was your most favorite stadium that you visited?
The major leagues, I think the coolest stadium was probably Arlington, although the city that I loved the most was Chicago. I never got to play in New York or Yankee Stadium, or obviously that would have won, or maybe Fenway, but I didn't get to play there either.
Okay.
In the minor leagues, I loved Salt Lake City. I just had a blast out there. I just thought it was a beautiful place. I love playing there. And looking back, probably some of those small single A towns like Waterloo, Iowa, Cedar Rapids, those small intimate towns that had a little bit of history to them and
Right.
a little bit of the antique feel of the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, favorite sports movie of all time?
It's got to be probably either Hoosiers or I'm a pretty big Bull Durham fan because they got it pretty close to right.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah.
But I also like the natural things like that.
Yeah.
Rocky, I'd have to go with Rocky too. That's one of my all-time favorite movies.
There you go. That's a good one. All right. Last one before Joseph gives you his last question is, and this is going to sound kind of like a stupid question, but I don't really know how else to phrase it. More pressure coming off the bench cold to pinch hit, or more pressure you've been in the lineup all day, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, runners on second and third, and you're down by 2.
I would much rather be in the whole game and face that situation at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. All right. So last one here, and we thought our guests would like to do a top 5 to finish with. So today we're going to go your top 5 left-handed hitters of all time. You don't have to put them in order from 1 to 5. Just the 5 left-handed hitters you think are the best ever.
Oh boy.
I know. And this wasn't obviously prearranged. So you have some time to think about it.
I'm going to definitely put my favorite baseball of all time in there. I have to put Don Mattingly just because.
Okay.
Right.
Probably Ken Griffey Jr.
Okay.
Ted Williams for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's not even a question. This one might sound a little strange. I love Larry Walker.
Yeah. MVP. Yeah.
Of course, I'm gonna have 10 more when I get off.
Right. you just got one more.
I got one more.
Yeah.
How about? George Brett was pretty good.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Let me go with George Brett.
Okay.
Pretty good. Yeah, he sure was.
right off the bat, I have to gripe that you left that Barry Bonds as my guy, but that's okay.
Well, there's only one reason I left him out.
Yeah, I know.
And I think you know why.
Yeah,
that's
a good. That's a good topic for a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
No question about that. Well, Steve, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, especially on a weekend, to join us. We think a lot of you. We appreciate what you did for Joseph over the years, and I can't imagine that there's a better man and a better coach in high school baseball than you, and we really do appreciate it. And it's great to catch up with you again.
Yeah, you guys too, man. That was a lot of fun. If there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know. But I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you.
We're glad to have you. Glad to have you. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Best of luck to you, buddy.
Thank you. All right. Again, special thanks to Steve Dunn for joining us today. We really enjoyed that conversation. And we want to thank our sponsor once again, Bonus Room Art, for all they do for the podcast. And we look forward to joining you again soon on the Press Box Podcast with more guests to come here in the month of January and on into February. And Ralph and I will also talk some more NFL as the playoffs continue and we head towards the Super Bowl. So again, for Ralph, this is Joseph signing off on the Press Box Podcast.